Kirk Douglas finally breaks silence. On Richard Harris. Kirk Douglas was born Isur Danielovich on December 9, 1916 in Amsterdam, New York, to Jewish immigrant parents from Belarus. Douglas rose from humble beginnings to become a symbol of resilience, talent, and tenacity. His early life was shaped by hardship and determination, growing up in a working-class family during the Great Depression, which instilled in him a relentless work ethic and a desire to succeed against the odds. Douglas's journey into acting began after he served in the United States Navy during World War II, an experience that not only shaped his character, but also deepened his appreciation for life and freedom. After the war, he studied acting at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York, where he honed his craft and developed the skills that would propel him into stardom. His rugged good looks, intense presence, and charismatic screen persona made him a natural leading man. He soon caught the attention of Hollywood studios and began his ascent in the film industry. Throughout the late 1940s and 1950s, Kirk Douglas became a major box office draw, starring in a string of memorable films that showcased his versatility and emotional range. He was known for playing complex, often morally ambiguous characters, tough, flawed heroes with a deep inner conflict. One of his most famous roles was in Champion, 1949, where he portrayed a ruthless boxer with fierce ambition, earning him his first Academy Award nomination. This film established Douglas as a serious actor capable of delivering raw, powerful performances. Douglas's contribution to cinema was not limited to his acting. In 1956, he made a bold move into film production, co-founding Bryna Productions, named after his mother. This decision gave him creative control over his projects at a time when actors rarely had such power in Hollywood. This independence allowed him to champion meaningful stories and push boundaries. Most notably, he produced and starred in the 1960 epic Spartacus, directed by Stanley Kubrick, which became a landmark film for its scale, storytelling, and its subtle but courageous stand against the Hollywood blacklist era. Spartacus remains one of the greatest historical epics ever made, and Douglas's role as the rebellious gladiator became an enduring symbol of resistance and freedom. Kirk Douglas's career was also marked by an incredible range of genres and roles, from westerns like Gunfight at the OK Corral to psychological dramas such as The Bad and the Beautiful and Lust for Life, where he famously portrayed the troubled artist Vincent van Gogh with a raw intensity that captured the painter's tortured genius. His willingness to tackle challenging roles that explored human vulnerability, ambition, and redemption won him critical acclaim and a lasting place in cinematic history. Beyond his professional achievements, Douglas was a man of deep conviction and generosity. He was a philanthropist who donated millions to educational and cultural institutions, including supporting film preservation and promoting peace initiatives. His philanthropic efforts extended globally, reflecting his belief in the power of art and education to improve lives. He was also a dedicated family man, known for his close relationship with his children, especially his son, Michael Douglas, who followed in his footsteps to become a celebrated actor and producer. In his later years, even after facing a severe stroke in 1996 that impaired his ability to speak, Kirk Douglas remained a symbol of courage and perseverance. He continued to write memoirs and make public appearances, inspiring millions with his story of overcoming adversity and embracing life with passion and dignity. His memoirs, such as The Ragman's Son and Let's Face It, offer a candid and heartfelt glimpse into the life of a man who fought tirelessly to carve his own path in Hollywood and beyond. Kirk Douglas's personal life was as eventful and complex as his illustrious career in Hollywood. He married his first wife, Diana Dill, on November 2, 1943, during the early years of his rising stardom. Their union marked the beginning of a family that would eventually produce notable figures in the entertainment industry. Together, Kirk and Diana had two sons, Michael Douglas, who would go on to become an acclaimed actor and producer in his own right, and Joel Douglas, who carved out a career as a producer. This marriage, however, was not without its challenges, and eventually ended in divorce in 1951 after nearly 8 years together. The split reflected not just the strains of personal differences, but also the pressures of Hollywood life and the demands of Douglas's burgeoning career, which often kept him away from home for long periods. Shortly after his divorce, Kirk's love life remained equally complicated and public. In his autobiography, The Ragman's Son, he reveals that in the early 1950s he became engaged to Italian actress Pier Angeli. The two met on the set of the 1953 film The Story of Three Loves, where their chemistry blossomed into a serious romantic relationship. Their engagement was widely reported at the time, stirring interest among fans and the media alike, as Angeli was a celebrated starlet known for her beauty and talent. However, despite the promise of marriage, the couple never made it down the aisle. Various sources suggest that the pressures of Hollywood, personal differences, and perhaps Kirk's own evolving feelings contributed to the eventual dissolution of their engagement. This episode in his life illustrated the often tumultuous nature of romantic relationships in the glare of the public eye and underscored Douglas's complex emotional world. Following this, fate brought Kirk Douglas to Paris, a city known for romance and reinvention, where he met Anne Bidens while filming Act of Love. Anne, born Hannelore Marx in Hanover, Germany, on April 23, 1919, had a remarkable personal history that shaped the foundation of their lifelong relationship. She was a survivor who had fled Nazi Germany, escaping persecution and danger through her intelligence and resourcefulness. During her early years, Anne used her remarkable multilingual talents to carve out a career in the film industry, working as a translator and subtitle specialist in film studios, an occupation that brought her into contact with many industry insiders. Their meeting was serendipitous and transformative for both. They married on May 29, 1954, beginning a partnership that would endure for 6 decades. Their marriage was celebrated publicly and privately as one of Hollywood's lasting romances. In 2014, the couple marked their 60th wedding anniversary with a grand celebration at the historic Greystone Mansion in Beverly Hills, a venue symbolic of their enduring love and resilience. Together, Kirk and Anne had 2 sons, Peter Douglas, who pursued a career in producing, and Eric Douglas, who followed his father's footsteps into acting. Sadly, Eric's life was marked by struggles that ended tragically when he died on July 6, 2004, at the age of 46, from an overdose of alcohol and drugs. This loss deeply affected both Kirk and Anne, underscoring the complex and sometimes painful realities behind their seemingly glamorous lives. Throughout their long marriage, Kirk Douglas was known to have had affairs with other women, including several well-known Hollywood starlets. Unlike many of his contemporaries who concealed such indiscretions, Douglas was remarkably open about his infidelities, even to Anne. Remarkably, she accepted these affairs with a pragmatic attitude shaped by her European upbringing. Anne explained, "As a European, I understood it was unrealistic to expect total fidelity in a marriage. This perspective allowed them to maintain a stable relationship despite these challenges. Their marriage was built not just on romantic idealism, but on mutual respect, understanding, and a commitment that transcended conventional norms." This complex dynamic between Douglas and Bidens highlighted the nuances of their partnership and shed light on the private realities that often accompany public lives in Hollywood. For decades, the relationship between Hollywood titan Kirk Douglas and the legendary Irish actor Richard Harris had remained shrouded in mystery, speculation, and a fair amount of myth. Both men were known for their commanding on-screen presence, off-screen charisma, and larger-than-life personas. Yet, while they operated in similar cinematic spheres, frequently cast as heroic or volatile characters and celebrated for their intense performances, they rarely shared the screen. Even more curious was the almost total silence from both parties about each other in interviews, memoirs, or industry chatter. That is, until Douglas, then in his 90s, finally chose to reveal the truth behind their long-assumed silence. In a reflective and surprisingly candid interview near the end of his life, Kirk Douglas broke his silence about his personal impressions and complicated relationship with Richard Harris. He acknowledged that Harris, though immensely talented, was often unpredictable and sometimes difficult to work with, particularly during the height of his fame in the 1960s and 1970s. Douglas admitted he had long admired Harris's raw acting ability, calling him a fearless performer who never played it safe, and comparing him to other risk-takers like Marlon Brando or Peter O'Toole. However, Douglas also confessed that Harris's well-documented drinking and temperamental behavior on set were factors that made studios hesitant to pair them together in major projects, despite several near collaborations. One such project Douglas mentioned was a historical epic in the late 1960s where both were nearly cast as co-leads. The producers loved the idea, Douglas recalled. They said it would be explosive, and they were right. It would have exploded the production. He shared that while he had initially been enthusiastic, he later withdrew after hearing from mutual acquaintances that Harris had been feuding with directors and showing up to work inebriated. It wasn't personal, Douglas clarified. I just couldn't afford to compromise a production that size. However, he was quick to add that he never judged Harris as a man, only as a colleague in those circumstances. Douglas also offered a rare moment of humility, admitting he might have been too quick to dismiss Harris in those years. He recognized that Harris, like many actors of their generation, was wrestling with inner demons and often found solace or escape in self-destructive habits. We all carried something heavy, he said. Some of us masked it with ambition, others with booze. Maybe I was guilty of both. What struck many listeners and readers of Douglas's late-life remarks was his tone, not of rivalry, but of reconciliation. He expressed admiration for Harris's career trajectory, particularly his later roles like that of Albus Dumbledore in the early Harry Potter films. Douglas said, "He found a new audience, and he softened. You could see the wisdom in his eyes. I respected that." Douglas even revealed that shortly before Harris's death in 2002, the two had exchanged letters through a mutual friend. Though they never reunited in person, the exchange offered a sense of closure between the two legendary actors. Douglas wrote in his letter, "You blazed your own trail, Richard, and the fire never dimmed." Harris, in turn, reportedly responded with a characteristically cheeky yet sincere reply, thanking Douglas for not slapping me around in print all these years. In finally breaking his silence, Kirk Douglas not only humanized Richard Harris, but also showed a level of introspection rare among old-school Hollywood figures. His words painted a portrait of two powerful forces in cinema, men molded by hardship, ambition, and ego, whose paths ran parallel, occasionally crossed, and, in the end, found mutual respect. On January 28, 1996, at the age of 79, Kirk Douglas suffered a life-altering and devastating stroke that severely impaired his ability to speak, casting uncertainty over the remaining years of his life and career. For a man whose voice had once commanded attention on the silver screen in powerful roles such as Spartacus, Champion, and Paths of Glory, the sudden loss of speech was a shattering blow, not only to his identity as an actor, but also to his sense of independence and dignity. The stroke left him struggling with expressive aphasia, a condition that made it difficult for him to form and articulate words. Doctors delivered grim news to his devoted wife, Ann Bidens. Unless there was an almost immediate improvement, Kirk might never speak clearly again. The prognosis was bleak, especially for someone nearing 80 years old. But Douglas, who had never backed down from a challenge in his life, met this one with remarkable determination and discipline. Despite his frustration and emotional setbacks, he embarked on an intensive and grueling regimen of speech-language therapy. Every single day, he pushed himself through exercises designed to rebuild the neural pathways necessary for communication. Over the course of several months, his persistence began to pay off. Though his speech remained noticeably impaired for the rest of his life, he regained enough vocal control to once again speak in public, something many had feared would never be possible. In an extraordinary display of resilience and courage, just 2 months after the stroke, Douglas appeared at the 68th Academy Awards ceremony in March 1996. There, he received an honorary Oscar recognizing 50 years as a creative and moral force in the motion picture community. With visible emotion and great effort, he stood on stage and thanked the audience, a deeply moving moment that underscored his fighting spirit and his unbreakable connection to Hollywood. For many watching, the sight of the legendary actor reclaiming his voice, however limited, was both humbling and inspirational. Never one to keep silent about his life's challenges, Douglas channeled his stroke experience into writing. In 2002, he published My Stroke of Luck, a candid and hopeful memoir in which he recounted the trauma of his stroke and the arduous recovery that followed. The book was more than just a personal story. It was also meant to serve as a practical guide, or as he called it, an operating manual for families dealing with stroke victims. With honesty, wisdom, and a touch of humor, Douglas offered insights on therapy, emotional recovery, and the importance of support systems. It became a resource not only for fans, but also for others navigating the complex journey of post-stroke rehabilitation. Kirk Douglas lived nearly a quarter of a century after that debilitating event, demonstrating remarkable vitality and determination. His final years were spent largely out of the spotlight, but filled with family, writing, and philanthropy. On February 5, 2020, he passed away at his home in Beverly Hills, California, surrounded by his loved ones, at the extraordinary age of 103. His death marked the end of a monumental era in Hollywood history. Douglas was one of the last remaining stars of Hollywood's golden age and had lived long enough to see the industry evolve in ways unimaginable when he began his career in the 1940s. His funeral was held 2 days later, on February 7, 2020, at the Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles. The ceremony was private, attended by close friends and family, and filled with heartfelt tributes that celebrated not only his immense contributions to cinema, but also his strength of character and his enduring love for his family. Kirk was laid to rest in the same plot as his youngest son, Eric Douglas, a comedian and actor who had tragically passed away in 2004. This burial arrangement reflected the deep familial bonds that were so central to Douglas's life. The following year, on April 29, 2021, Kirk's beloved wife of 65 years, Ann Bidens Douglas, died at the remarkable age of 102. Like her husband, Ann had lived a long and impactful life, filled with contributions to charitable causes and a